cover like there's very simple ways to create frames. There's like, very detailed, complex ways to do it as well. And they keep releasing new features. So I'll share a lot of examples. So like there's like infinite information there. Also, there's a lot of opportunities in this space where there's specific channels where people are constantly posting, looking for like frames builders. So like there's like a lot of opportunity in terms of like jumping into the community and, based on like what you've learned here or like what you've learned after the presentation, you can go ahead and like make cool things and hack on things and complete a lot of bounties on Farcaster as well. So how to build frames, Farcaster frames. Let me see if I can get all the messages. So a little bit of intro. I think Annie already covered it. I was working as an engineer at Bison Trails and Coinbase. Both are fairly crypto companies. I'm recently working on a company called Outpaint. It is also a Web3 / e-commerce platform, and it's heavily utilizing Farcaster frames to create experiments. And so I've been very active in this community to understand like how people can engage with these new constructs. So just high level, like what is Farcaster? Farcaster is a decentralized social network. And what I mean by decentralized social network is you've seen Facebook and Twitter and there's so many, LinkedIn, there are all these social networks, and like some of the key features that they have is there's a set of users and they're able to post information, whether it's text or image, and they're able to broadcast this information to a set of users. And there's some sort of like social feed, but a lot of the social feed is constructed based on these relationships. So you have the relationship of followers and following, but then you also have relationships between like in something like Discord or Slack, you basically are like in a way following channels. And so what Farcaster does is it's a little bit of a decentralized social network where the data itself is on chain, and you have, and it's using like something like Ethereum's ENS, which is the decentralized identity as like the identity of the users. So, in crypto, everybody has public and private keys, and those private keys are, public keys are like hash numbers, which are like hard to remember. So, Ethereum's community has created this thing called ENS. And so you have this like .ens, .eth address, which is human readable, but there's actually a number behind it, very similar to how the internet works. And you have domain names and you have like IP addresses behind it. So what Farcaster has done is they've taken all these like constructs over the past 5 years that innovations built in Ethereum, and they've taken that as, the ENSs for like the identity piece. They've created their own sort of node or like databases that can be replicated for data. And then you also have this concept called state. And state is a little bit different, which is the sort of relationships between users. So like following and followers, or like liking a post, or, replying to a post. Those are not just like data itself, it's just like the relationships between these people. And all this data is on chain. So, tomorrow, if the team behind Farcaster like disappears, all this information is like online, it's replicated. You can spin up a database, you can copy this information, and you'll have access to it for as long as you want. So, as long as you're paying for storage and compute. So very similar to how, Ethereum and Bitcoin works, but the architecture is a little bit different because as you can tell, like there's a lot more information and it needs to be relatively cheap. And I've put this image on the side where you can see, you know, we go from RSS to Twitter to Farcaster. And there's this book that Chris Dixon recently released, like, I think about a month ago. And it's very, very interesting because it's very mainstream. So it like talks about how, you know, RSS was this sort of decentralized, open source social graph where you could like subscribe to RSSs, you could subscribe to newsletters, and over time, that information, that community, like it did fairly well. I think a lot of people are familiar with it, but it didn't have some of the you know, ease of use or user experience that you get from something like Twitter. And so there was a lot of like integrations between RSS and Twitter at that time. And, you know, like over the long term, it was easy to sign up to Twitter. It was easy to like, they had a very rich mobile app. They had a really rich like desktop application. They had a lot more innovation in that space. And they made it easy to create an account, to recover an account. A lot of things that are harder to do in a sort of open source way. That information, like, you know, over time, like Twitter basically like won that like social graph. But, you know, the concept of decentralized like networks has existed for a long time. It's just like it maybe hasn't like gotten mainstream adoption to the point that Farcaster or Blue Sky or some of these new networks are having. So I'll just like, let's see how many slides I have. So yeah, I'll kind of talk a little bit about this and kind of just show you what the app looks like. I think I'll make a lot more sense, just like from my own account. But basically, how is Farcaster differentiated? I haven't used any of the other decentralized networks, but there are quite a few. There's like Mastodon, there's Blue Sky, there's Lens, but they vary, I'm sure, in terms of like some of the architecture, but the core construct is the data is something that you can always gather, even if the core team behind the development, you know, at some point vanishes. So yeah, we'll go through the Workcast like client. Yeah, so basically it looks a little bit like Twitter. You have your profile, you have your feed, your, you know, following, and you have followers. So it's very much like Twitter, but there are like key differences. Like you can make a cast, but you can't delete it, because once you publish a cast or like a tweet, that information is like, you know, getting distributed to a lot of the networks, a lot of the nodes. And so I'm not sure. I think there are ways you can delete it, but there's it's going to like take time to get deleted from every single node. So it's not as instant as something like you know, a centralized entity that has like a closed set of servers. Let's see. Yeah, and then similar to one other key feature they have is this concept of channels. Channels is still it's still in development, so it's like not entirely decentralized, but it's a feature that will be decentralized at some point. But think of them as like Reddit communities, where you basically have a set of moderators that are sort of maintaining this channel. And so you have this dev channel, for instance. Even if something is deleted, it'll be always on chain. I think it will be removed. So basically, like when you are dealing with decentralized networks, like even if it's on chain, that data has to be like preserved somewhere, right? Like, so the two things you're basically paying for is storage and compute. There's like, when you first set up a Farcaster or like a Warpcast account, they're doing a bunch of things behind the scenes, and they reduced the fee. But I remember, you know, I think it was like $3 or $5. It used to be like a lot more, but I think now it's like $3, and you're basically paying for storage. And that storage is like for that year. And then next year you have to like renew that account. And basically they're like storing your information on these nodes. And obviously at some point when they scale to a certain point, they're going to have to figure out how to, store information past that year, or they might have like archival nodes or something like that. So yeah. But the gas will, yeah, like I think they will be deleted, but there might be like references to it. So yeah, that's an interesting question, but I don't think it's a soft delete, if that's what you're asking. Yeah, and then you have like the channels. So this is what it looks like. I think one interesting feature of this is like, as you're sort of like in Twitter tweeting out, you are just kind of doing it to your own set of followers. On something like Farcaster, you can like not only cast out something, you can cast it out to a specific channel. So what that does is it helps people who are in those sort of channels be able to like see interesting content from you and are able to follow you. So it like really kind of bootstraps that community. So yeah, this is like not really decentralized specific, but just like I think one of the key highlights of what makes Farcaster interesting. One other thing to point out is I mentioned it's decentralized, which means that the data or Farcaster is decentralized, but the client, this front end, is it's an app, and anyone can build this app. So I want to show you another example of another client called Supercast, and it looks very similar, has like slight differences in terms of UI, but the data is the same. They have some additional features like multi-accounts, and I think you're still able to read into it. So I have this, I made this Farcaster Raycast plugin, and let's see if I have, this is also on Workcast. So there's another client called Nuke Social, also another Farcaster client. So what you'll start noticing is like, there's something like 10 companies out there who are all sort of making their own, front ends to the same data, with, their own like flavors of features, but the core features are the same. Let's see. Yeah, all right. So, and then the last thing I think I want to say is like, it's crypto native. So every account is an ETH address, and you can connect it to your own like crypto wallets. And so you're able to take actions in the feed, and you have your wallet, your Ethereum wallet, your Solana wallet attached to it. So you're able to like have like interesting sort of crypto native experiences. So similar to in crypto, like how you can like mint with your wallet, or you can play games on dApps. You're able to do a lot of those things inside these clients without doing any additional work. And then the frames itself, the definition is, a frame basically lets you turn any cast into an interactive app. It's a standard way for creating interactive and authenticated experiences on Farcaster. So here's an example where Paichi basically like posted a mint frame. I don't know if you can tell from the picture, it's a little bit not bright enough, but I'll go through some examples. So what can you make with it? And so there's a couple of examples. You can subscribe to a newsletter. You can check growth stats. You can play games like trading cards. You can get discounts. You can also, claim or post bounties. So I'll just go through one example here, like subscribing to a newsletter. like David Furlong made this cast, this frame where you can basically read his publication inline, or you can subscribe, or you can mint the post itself. So you can take actions here. And the way you tell that this is a frame is it's basically an image embedded in your feed, but it has these like interactive buttons here. And when I engage with this button, the frame, which is almost like an app within the cast, it's able to take your data and it's able to, it like knows that you're interacting with it. It has information about who you are, your profile, your wallet. So like if you want to like transact with this thing, you're able to do that. Yeah, so let's just do like some fun exercises here. Yeah, and then there's a couple of other ones. I think another very, this one I think just got released today. But you know, Coinbase did this frame where if you mint this NFT, you're able to get 20% off all Coinbase merch. So this is an example of, and then some information about it, and then links to their shop. But there's a lot of like examples of what you can do. I think one really simple way to learn about this is just go to the frames channel, and it's just a channel where anytime someone comes up with a new frame, they will post it here. But you should be able to see a lot of the stuff in your feed as well. Yeah, so this is actually, before I just like go through the specification, very high level. Any questions like up until now that I should? All right, so I think I will go ahead. Yeah, so we'll go through a specification, and what I'll do is I'll post a couple of different ways you can like create frames. There's lots of different ways. There's like no code, low code tools as well at this point. So if you don't want to, set up your editor and all of that, you're still able to create frames. And there's like new tools coming out, practically every week. So this is a link to the specification. One thing I kind of want to mention here is a frame is a kind of like what we looked at. It's like an image with these interactive buttons. It's built on top of the, I guess you can call it like an open graph standard. An open graph standard is something, I think Facebook came up with it, but when you post a link to any social network, you're able to, before you actually hit submit, you generally are able to see this sort of image and description sort of pop out. So I'll give an example here. If I create, let's see, thinking of a URL here, like maybe nuke. If I post a link, you see how it like unfurl this like image with description. This is like a very standard thing across like a lot of social networks. It's built on the specification called Open Graph. And under the hood, what it really is it's an HTML page where it has a header tag, and in the head, you have some specific entries that will specify the image, the title, and the description. And so what Farcaster has done is they've taken that same standard open graph model and they've added a few additional metadata. And that metadata is like buttons or button names or actions. And so they've basically just extended that specification. And the clients, which is Warpcast or Supercast, they're able to understand what these tags mean, and then they're able to like show the information. So if I go through, yeah, all right. So I guess I'll just go through like a quick demo, and I'll mention a couple of low-code tools as well. You know, in the event that you don't want to like set up your terminal. Yeah, let's see. Keep losing the document. So I'll go back to this link. So this document itself, this is on the docs.farcaster.xyz. It has like a lot of information. This image is there, but if you go below, there's like a set of resources, and there's videos, there's some examples, there's some frameworks. I just want to cover go into specifications. So this is just like an example of what a frame looks like. You have like an image with a button, and then you click the button and it'll like show another frame, and then you can have more buttons. And so you can make it into a very interactive experience. And if you scroll down, you'll see, you can definitely read all of these things. They just kind of describe the same thing that I said, just in a more technical term. But constructing a frame, this is basically what it looks like. This is an example of a meta property, and these are the required properties. So there's really only three: FC:frame, FC:frame:image, and OG:image. And I'll show you, and this will start making a lot more sense. And the rest of the properties, like all the buttons and actions, all of that is optional. So you don't even need those things. Yeah, and then they kind of, you know, start describing, like the buttons could be, you could be posting a link, you could be redirecting to another website, you could be minting, you know, from a smart contract. So you could do all sorts of like fun things. I think the transactions and minting get a little bit more on the more complicated side. So the first thing I'll do is go through. Replit. Replit is this website that makes it really, and I'll just post a link to this as well. So Replit's this website that makes it really easy to basically set up or spin up a server. And yeah, just go to the link, like sign in with your, you know, Google or GitHub or whatever. And what I did is I just like hopped in here. There's a lot of just the community will like create their own sort of sample. They're sort of like sample apps that you can copy or clone. So this is a good place. The only downside with Replit is, I think, to run a production server, you need to be on a paid plan, or might just need to put your credit card. But you can see we'll just go through creating one and showing you what the sort of details look like, and then putting it into a frame validator, and you can see what that looks like. So if you go into Replit, sign in, just search for Farcaster. I think right now, I think there might just be one example. So there's this one called Linktree Frame. It's made by somebody named Soren. And all it does is it renders 4 links to external websites. And this is like less than 50 lines of code. So they auto-generated a name for me. And I'll just go ahead and say create REPL. I'm not sure if I can just share this link, but yeah, if you're not able to, just let me know. But I think this is the only sort of sample code in Replit. Hopefully you can see my screen. Let me see if I should expand this a bit. So basically, this is just a single file. And all it does is, if you scroll to the bottom, it's a server that is running on port 3000. And this whole section up here is basically defining when you hit this endpoint, the 3000 endpoint, it's going to write this HTML section. And as you can see in the section, it's basically the sort of default things that all HTML pages have, which is like the meta char set and the viewport. And the body is like, you can have anything, frankly, because this is not, you're not sharing the web page, you're sharing the endpoint or the server. So if you share this, yeah, like I think we can, this is a little bit of like, there are ways you can hide it or you can redirect, but we'll just skip that. The body piece is not really important. The piece that's important is inside the head. And you can see here that you have the meta properties. So you have the OG title, OG image, which is the open graph. And the thing that unfurls when you kind of share it in a social feed. And then you have the FC frame image. These are all optional. So in this case, there's like a button 1, button 2, button 3, button 4. So you can have up to 4 buttons. And let's just run this and see what happens. So Replit does this thing really interesting where, so yeah, we basically ran it. They are running your server for you right now. And it's in dev. So obviously if I like leave the screen, the app will shut down. But if you do want to launch this, there is a deploy button right at the top here. So you're able to deploy the app, and then you're able to like share the URL in your Farcaster. So we're just going to show you what the dev piece looks like. If you click on this in Replit, if you click on this like web view, this replit.dev in the URL where the page is being rendered, you'll see there's this link, external link. So it's just like a bunch of hash dot chainway dot replit dot dev. So this URL basically lets you look at this website on any, in your web browser effectively. So let me just open it up into another like web browser page. So same thing, you can see where the body shows up here. But what's interesting is if you right click and inspect and you open your console, your elements, you will see that there's the head element. If you open that, all the information is there. So this is what we're trying to create. We're basically just trying to create an HTML page, and every HTML page has these constructs. And obviously to make this more interactive, where you click a button and then you're able to go to another URL, and then you can, the information changes, like the image changes or the title changes or the buttons change, like that requires a little bit more, it requires a lot more just like copy pasting of code. So like a lot of these like frameworks that we'll look through will sort of make it much simpler to do this stuff for you. But this is sort of the, this is like the basics of it. So at any point as you're building things, you really need to think about just what is the HTML, what is the head information that is like returned. And in order to test this out, Warpcast has this thing called a frames validator. So if we go back into our documentation, I have to keep referencing this, but in the documentation, if you scroll down, you'll see this thing called a Warpcast frame validator. And this is basically, think of it as like a place you want to just, once you're done like creating your frame, you want to like publish it to the world. This is a good place to do that. To test it out before you actually like cast it to, to your users. So we'll take the example URL, we'll copy it, take it back to the validator. I think the URL for this is warpcast.com /tilde developers frames. And then we'll post it in the validator and hit refresh. And so this is what like when you post the URL in your cast, this is what will this is what the experience will look like. And basically there's an image, it's hard-coded, and then you have these 4 buttons, and each of these 4 buttons is like a link that takes you to these websites. So yeah, this is kind of the basics of it, and then we can kind of go through yeah, we can go through like a couple of no-code tools, and there's additional links to example frames. So these are GitHub repos with like pretty much every open source frame out there. People have sort of consolidated this information and put them in these repos. So it's a really, one easy way to sort of like learn these things or sort of build these things is to just like look at other frames and try to run them yourself, and try to like replicate that sort of example. And just like, I guess the way I think of it is like copy paste like the experiences that you sort of like, because every frame is a little bit different, and people are experimenting with new things all the time. Yeah, and then this is the more framework focused version, so we can like open up our code editor and just go through the go through an example that way as well. But before I do that, does anyone have any questions? And I will also post so I'll post the frames validator. And cool. Yeah, so I think that the next step here would basically just be so a couple of like low code examples I want to share, and I think I'll put them in the presentation also. One's called drop frames, and basically all this is you upload a GIF or a PNG or an image, and I think the way they've done it is, I think either they're funding it or the artist is funding the sort of the mint fee, although it might have changed. So this is like a really simple way where you just drop an image or a PNG, and they're able to create like a frame for you. And I think this one is only focused on just minting. So it's a little bit like Zora or OpenSea, where you like post an NFT, but then in this case, you're able to do it inside the frame. So they will like generate a URL for you. You don't need to write any code here. So this is like a really fun way to do it. There's another app. So there's a service called Nanar. You'll probably end up using it if you're making frames, but they also have, I think that it's a paid service for their APIs, but they also have this thing called a frame studio. And so you're able to like, take any of their templates, like the image gallery, as you can see here, and you're able to, change the image, change the buttons, the text, the destination. So you're able to do this in a very like sort of click-through way. Obviously, this is a lot more comprehensive than the drop frame. So this is also a really good example of how to make frames. Yeah, and then there's like new ones popping up all the time. I think there's I think these are probably the most like the two most popular ones I can think of. All right, so demo with the Frog FM. So actually, yeah, it's called Frog FM. Sounds like a radio channel, but yeah, Frog FM is. Let me see, how are we doing on time? All right, so we have, yeah, all right. So I think we have about 30 minutes. How do we, I guess, want to do this? Should I like, I can show you, I think, the sort of intro for this, but would love for people to sort of like set this up. High level, like Frog FM, there's few other frameworks out here, but Frog is one. There's one called Frames.js. They're all, think of them as a little bit like wrappers or sort of opinions on like how your app should be structured. And so for this, obviously, you need to like, you know, set up your editor, and we can just go through a sample app, and then you're able to publish this on Vercel, or there's a lot of services out there like Cloudflare, and they'll give you examples of like, yeah, so Cloudflare Remix, Next, so you can use Vercel. There are a lot of free options of just like creating your app and then publishing it to these services, and you have like full control over this stuff. So, and they'll sort of basically do the same thing for you, but they'll make it a little bit easier to be able to have a more interactive app. I think this has just been what I've been using. So yeah, we can go through that, but I would love for people to, I guess, like, if they want to go through this option, like set up their editor, and basically we can start here. This is like the Frog FM, and you have like a quick start guide. So what I would do is go to the homepage, get started, and then scroll down here to quick start, and you can bootstrap your app using the CLI. So if you need to have Node set up, and then that's and Node comes with npm, and then you're able to run this command, and it's going to like walk you through a series of questions so you can like set up your app. Right. Yeah, we can do that for the recording for sure. And all the sort of no-code tools that I mentioned, I'll put those in the presentation, and that link will be public. So you should have access to that as well. Yeah, so I mean, I'll start, but if anyone has questions, I would focus on that first. And I can keep sort of like building the app alongside you guys. So yeah, you'll need an editor, probably both Windows and Mac. Everything should work. See if my editor is like. Am I? So, any questions by any chance? Will we need a Farcaster account? So to create a frame, you don't, but the fun is in basically posting it. The easiest way to do it is through Warpcast, but I think Supercast also works. Basically, you they do a bunch of things behind the scenes for you, which is like, it's not a traditional account. So they're basically creating an account for you. They're buying storage for you, and then they're like letting you sign in. So there's a few sort of like keys under the hood. And so if you use something like Warpcast, you don't like really have to think about it. But there are more complicated ways of like setting it up. So I would recommend basically what kind of 90% of the people do is they just set up a Warpcast account, and then you can switch to any of the other apps as well. Yeah, cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I was a little concerned. I don't want to go like too deep without giving some intro. So I'm just gonna high level. Yeah, just feel free to ask questions. I'm also just gonna walk through just like setting this up, because this will basically give you an example out of the box. So let's just do that. A few things you want to check. And actually, I don't know if my editor is like large enough. One additional thing, since this is like, I think, a huge sort of incentive, is there's a frames channel. There's this very interesting channel called Someone Build. And basically, it's just like a bunch of ideas. A lot of them are related to frames. A lot of them are just related to Farcaster things that people want to use, but like just don't have the time. So if you're, you get interested in building frames and want to make something cool, this is one place to like find some ideas, so you don't have to like, think of something from scratch. I think that's sometimes the hardest. And then there's also a channel called Bountycaster. And so people are always posting bounties for things they want made. So yeah, and then you can earn rewards that way as well. Like you get a lot of DGen or USDC or all sorts of tokens. So for my editor, so yeah, I guess once you have Node, so this is what we're going to do. You check whether you have your Node version, NPM version, and then we're using Frog, but I think Frames.js is equally popular. And then you do npm init frog. And then they're going to make you run through a series of steps. So like in my case, I'll call it like, I don't know, frog. Yeah, sure. Frog sample app. Then you choose what template you want. So I'm the most familiar with Next and Vercel, but you can use Cloudflare. There's a bunch of other examples, but yeah, I would say the easiest is just Vercel, Cloudflare as well, and they're both free to basically publish your apps. And then they give you a bunch of additional steps, but they've just created the app for you. So you CD into your example app. So they're giving you a list of commands once you make your app name, then you do npm install. So this is because every app is sort of structured in this as a node app. So you have a package.json file, and it has a set of dependencies. And then you do npm run dev. So actually, before I do that, let me just open up my code editor. This is my code editor. So this is basically what the app looks like. You have a bunch of configuration files. The key thing here really is this package.json. So it comes with these scripts. The dev is to run it locally. Deploys run when you publish your app on Vercel or Cloudflare, any of those hosting services. They'll run this command. Vercel does this like out of the box. And then building is like when you want to build it for production. So again, like I don't think you have to do it, but right before you publish, it's worth just running it, making sure it works properly. The only dependencies it has is Frog, which is this sort of set of helper functions that people have written, so you don't have to write all this like HTML by hand. And then Hono, it's like basically a server. It's similar to Express if people have already used that. And and then dev dependencies. So yeah, you have your app. In terms of folder structure, you have a public folder with the icon, which is like your image. So any static images that you want to render from your frame, you can put them in this folder. And then you have the API index file. And this is it. Like the whole app is just like 75 lines. And it basically, the way it works is you have this like initiation up here. So new frog. And this is just kind of copy paste for now. But it's your base path. And when a user goes to the link, it's actually going to hit this API endpoint. And so this is basically like how you sort of define the endpoint routes. And so if you go to just your index URL, you return this information, and this information is, an image tag with some text, and then intents. And intents are those like buttons or redirects, and it does a bunch of interactive things. So like, let me just sort of run this locally so I can show you what that will look like. So we install the dependencies, and now we just do npm run dev. And as you can see, it gave us two URLs. One of them is the actual, the frame. But you will see, so what's interesting is the API endpoint. Again, this is the HTML, but we only care about the head tag, correct? So if you inspect the element, you'll see that here's the head tag. And it's pre-populated with all this information. So the way to test this is we did something similar for the replit URL. The difference is because this is running locally on your computer and it's a local host, you'll have to use something like ngrok, which routes your local host to like an external URL, so you can test it in this external like environment. But when you run Frog locally, they also give you this dev tool. And if you open the dev tool, it looks a lot similar to the Warpcast frame validator. So this is what the sample app out of the box looks like. You open it, there's like a welcome text, and then you have this text field, and then you have 3 buttons for apple, orange, and banana. So if you click on any of them, it'll change based on what you clicked on. So nice choice, apples. When you click on oranges, it says nice choice, oranges. So if we go through the sample app here, what you'll see is there's the text input, then you have the buttons, and each button has a value. And let's see how else to explain this. There's this thing called status. So like basically you have an image, and that the frame has images and intents. So it has that image tag, and then it has like buttons, right? But the image, like what this I guess framework has done is they've done something interesting where they've given you this thing called image. And if you wrap a div inside that image, when this is returned from the server, it like converts into an image. And what I mean by that is, if you look at this, this like dev tool, and you try to like, drag this image, you will see it's like, it's not actually text, it's like an image that they've converted. And so this is like sort of the bells and whistles this like framework is giving you out of the box. Yeah, so this is just styling. You can, make it super bare bones. The key piece to know here is when you hit this path, you get a bunch of information, which is like from this callback, and it's this. The C stands for context, and if you do, let's see. So this whole app will come sort of, as the sample app, and you can sort of like modify this to like your liking. But if you want to see like how this actually works, you have, when you hit this endpoint, what the server will do is it'll return back the C or the context, and it's giving you the button value back if the user clicked a button. It's giving you back an input text if the user put an input in that text field. And then it's giving you a status. And what status is if you actually click into it with your, I think, command click in your editor, option click. It might be command click in your editor, but VS Code, or this is very similar to VS Code, it's called cursor. So you can see how the three sort of responses you get back are initial, redirect, or response. And so the first time a frame is rendered, it's an initial frame. And then when you click on the frame, any of the buttons or the text, it'll give back the response status. So what this, what the app is doing is when you first render it, you have the status as welcome. And then the second time when you click into any of the buttons, the status will change to response. So then it'll render this, nice choice with your fruit. And then the fruit is defined up here, where either it's the button value or it's the input value. So yeah, like you'll be able to read this and like sort of figure out the sort of, this is like the basis of it. You can do more interesting things like get information about your followers. You can get information about like the profile picture, all the Farcaster data. You can do things like token gating. It can get pretty complex, but if you have any questions, just can we connect a smart contract to a frame button? Yeah, you can. So they have, again, like Frog makes it really simple. So they have this thing called button, but you can also have button.link, which is if you want to click a button that goes to an external website. But they also have this thing called button.transaction. And then I think it's called target. And then you define the URL in your target. So in our case, let's say mint, then it won't be that, right? Yeah, so button.transaction. And then you can say, for the target, you want to define the transaction app.frame /mint, and then the information about the smart contract. So to get more details on this, the way I would do it is just hop into Frog, hit Command K, which is basically search in like most developer documentation, and just search for transaction, frog.transaction. Oh, that page didn't load. yeah, button.transaction. So this whole section goes over intents, but this goes through the transaction with the mint example. And then I don't know if they have the full, I don't know if they have the full example in this, but the sort of examples that I've shared, a lot of people have already created sort of the transaction examples. And one other like really quick hack, what I do is like, if I'm specifically looking for this, I'll copy the thing and I'll basically just search all of GitHub. So I'll do something like, I have a Raycast thing set up. So like if I just want to search for, oh, that didn't work. Type of, yeah. So I basically will sometimes go into GitHub and just like search for that exact snippet, just because I want to look at some sample apps of how people have done it. So here's like a good example. This guy, Greg, he made one where he has this like tipping file and he's added the transaction with the address and the network. So obviously the sort of examples differ a little bit, but you know, he's using, I'm pretty sure he's using Frog as well. Yeah, it's using Frog. And yeah, so you can do that. So yeah, I think that's basically the gist of it. A few other things you can do. Yeah. A few other things you can do, like, you know, one of the things that I've noticed when I was using this is like, there's too much logic in this, which I don't love. So what I would do is like, copy this, basically just create another and simplify this a little bit. So let's just say second frame. And then we can call this second. And then here, if you want to go from one button to like another endpoint, you can go to button, what is it? I think it's target. No, there's something else. What value? My TypeScript doesn't work that well. Let's see. Was it action? I think, yeah, probably action. Yep, action. So you can do /second. So this is basically an example of second frame. So like if you want to go from one frame to the second frame to the third frame and just like not, you know, put all the logic in just one endpoint, this is how I would basically structure it. And then again, you don't have to use inline styling. That's what it comes with, but you could set up Tailwind or any of those other styling solutions, which I think will make it a bit easier. Yeah, and Frog actually, I haven't used it, but Frog has done this thing where, is it even there? I think they came up with like Frog UI. So they actually give you some components you can just import. So you can create your own system. They give you sort of these base components like image, heading, dividers, columns, that kind of stuff. You can define your own sort of color schemes, your own fonts. And then, yeah, you can basically write your UI the way they've sort of done it. So you don't even have to write CSS like I mean, you kind of are, but they're sort of making it easy for you to like, you know, because frames are so limited, they sort of created almost like a wrapper around the UI. So this is, I think, another really good option if you just like have a really simple frame and don't write all the CSS yourself. I would also, look into this like Frogs UI. It's almost like a add-on to your sort of like core framework. I don't know. Was that helpful by any chance? Hopefully not too confusing. Yeah, I think those are kind of it. Oh, okay. I think one other thing I would cover is Frog has examples probably. Yeah. So one thing, a big thing I would cover is in the Frogs framework file, search for middleware. And what middleware is like when you make a request and you get a bunch of information back, a lot of times you need information about the person who's like clicking the frames. So you might want to know how many followers they have, what tokens they have. I don't know, you might want their profile image. You might want to do something like interactive. So there's this company called Airstack and Nanar. And what they do is they're sort of like wrappers around the Farcaster API, but they give you a lot more information back. And this specific section middleware basically will cover, and some of the stuff is even copy pastable, frankly, where you want information about the follower. You can like, for instance, here, like you can add this Nanar. I think the Nanar one's paid. Airstack, you can get free credits, but basically you put the API key, the features that you want. So you want additional information about the cast, you want additional information about the interactor, and then you can extract that information from your context. So for instance, here in the example that they've shown, you can, when the interactor or the person interacting with the cast clicks the button, you can get back their follower count and their display name. So they make it really, really easy because, yeah, you basically just like attach these few lines and you get all this additional information back. And if you hover over these examples, you can actually see all the details you get back. So the FID number, display number, custody address, follower count, that kind of stuff. And then airstack.xyz is the other sort of service provider, also has APIs and can be used in a middleware. So they give you lots of examples where you can create things like allow list or token gated frames. Like you only want, users that have 100 followers to be able to interact with your frame. So this is one way to do it. And basically they will sort of simplify the code that you need to write. And then they give you a lot of sort of examples out of the box as well. And then the third provider is this thing called Pinata. They do something similar as well. I think they all have like slightly different features, but they are all sort of focused on giving you a lot more information back from the APIs outside sort of just the bare bones. So I think I'm gonna hang around. Yeah, can we be a frame generator without being a member of WordPress app since it's not free? You can create a frame, but to post a frame, you will need an account. And then you can also like, yeah, I mean, yeah, like I think it's like $3 now, so it's not like too bad. But you will can we be a frame generator without being? Yeah, I don't think you can generate a frame because you have to cast it from an account, right? So that would require an account. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and put some of these examples in the presentation. Let's see. So there's Nanar, there's air stack. I think that's XYZ. And I think Pinata. Also, Pinata has like also additional like information IPFS. So, if you're creating any smart contracts and want to store metadata, like images and stuff, but like not in a centralized, like a decentralized service, like they have APIs for that as well. And I think Pinata is like free to use as well, the sort of the base plan. Let's see. Coinbase is a reward quest that returns the Farcaster fee. So basically, if you follow the quest correctly, they pay you. Oh, nice. I didn't know that. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, I also think like, I also think just like the sort of the opportunities on creating frames is, it's like quite open because they just like, I think frames just like was released in February or March. So it's like fairly new. And so there's always people looking for, like the bounty caster is like, I think a really good example of like people looking for frames builders. And then that something build is also like a really good example. But there's like lots of opportunities to earn rewards for stuff like this. Let's see. Yeah. So I think those are the three providers that I know. I think just to go over some of the GitHub examples, like this has like 405 stars. A lot of what we sort of covered here. I think, yeah, so they talk about open frames. So in terms of like getting help, all the Nanar, Pinata, Frog, they all have Discords or Telegrams, and there's people are very active. I'm on basically, I think outside Pinata, I'm on all of them. Airstack. So if you have any questions, that would be the best place. And you can also just post in the builder, and I'll try to answer. Yeah, and then useful tools. We only covered the sort of Workcast validator and the Frog, but there's like, additional things like libraries to convert your HTML to images. We didn't talk about it, but like Coinbase has a really popular open source framework called On-Chain Kit. Yeah, and then these are all the boilerplate. So we use the one from Frog, but there are all these examples you can start from any of these ones as well. We'll be getting, yeah. Let's see. And then open source frames. So these are all the examples. Degen frame, token gated frame, snake. Somebody made the snake game in the frame, RSVP. So I would actually encourage whatever you're building, like just go through all these examples, find the one that's like kind of closest to like what you're trying to set up, and then sort of like work your way, like, you know, backwards from that. Minting GPT frame, so all sorts of random stuff. Yeah, and then people are constantly updating these GitHubs. So I would just, you know, if you have a GitHub account, just like star the repo, and, you know, as people are making change, actually one way to do this is you can just like watch for all activity. It can get annoying, but that this way, as you know, anytime somebody is coming up with like new examples. Cool. I hope this was helpful.
Thank you so much, Arti. This was amazing. I personally found it really interesting, and I'm not super technical, so I'm sure for those folks who are looking to get those skills, this was a really thorough and easy to follow workshop. So big thanks from all of us, and thank you all who have participated. Our next workshop starts in 30 minutes, so go have a bathroom break, maybe get a coffee, and we'll see you on the Zoom line then. Thanks, everyone.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
See you in 30. Bye.
Bye.